Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to today's webinar. This is Lisa Williams on staff with MPMA, and I want to thank the team from A2B Tracking for presenting Automating Property Management with RFID. I'm going to turn it over now to Dan Aria.
Thanks, Lisa, and welcome everyone. And I want to welcome my colleague who's going to be joining me today on this webinar, Sharif Christmas. Hello, Sharif.
Hello, and good afternoon, everyone.
So today, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with a quick poll, and we'll bring the poll up, and it's one question: and how is your organization currently performing physical inventories? And you can just choose one of the options below, whether it's manual, barcode, RFID, or a combination of barcode and RFID. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to cover a couple of quick housekeeping items. This session will be recorded, and we will be sharing the video recording in an email with a copy of the slide deck. We will be having a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. However, as we move through the session, please feel free to enter any questions you may have in the question box of your GoToWebinar panel, and we will get to them as quickly as we can. So what we'll do now is we'll go over the results of the poll, and it looks like barcode is leading the way, and then 30% of you are doing it manually, and only 10% are doing RFID, and 20% are a combination. So a pretty evenly mixed match with the majority using barcode. So hopefully with this webinar, you'll learn some additional facts and features about the benefits of RFID and how that can benefit your business. I'd also like to note that we are joined today by a diverse audience of small, medium, and large government contractors, as well as some educational institutions and research facilities. So in today's session, we're going to focus on using RFID technology to automate your property management requirements. As you may be aware, property managers today, you are expected to manage your inventories in an efficient and accurate manner more than ever before. And RFID technology is meeting this challenge for property managers by providing their organization with real-time inventory updates, saving a significant amount of time and improving inventory accuracy rates to 99% or better. Pretty significant. And organizations who are proactive in making this investment in RFID technology are gaining huge advantages over their competition, who may be using spreadsheets or other outdated technology tools to meet their property management objectives. So let's get into the agenda. So the first thing we're going to talk about today are key parts of an RFID system and what is required, data management and autonomous options for collecting the data, how your audit readiness will be improved with RFID technology. We're also going to look at mobile RFID in action, the benefits of passive RFID tags versus active RFID tags, and we'll determine what is the best performing RFID tag for your particular use case and how we go about that. We're going to look at some RFID printing options and what works best for your particular use case, whether you're going to print on site or whether you would outsource that requirement. And certainly we're going to attach or look at the RFID tag pitfalls to avoid when implementing an RFID system. We'll look at some use case examples, and then we will end it with a Q&A session. So we'll go to the next slide, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Sharif.
All right, thanks, Dan. A little bit about me, Sharif Christmas. I've worked here at A2B Tracking for the last 10 years, working with the DoD, government property, RFID solutions, government property management, data collection, a whole bunch of different solutions, delivering to customers, making their lives a whole lot easier. So enough about me. Key parts to an RFID system. Now, Dan is going to talk to you guys about choosing the tag, so I'm not going to beat that one, down into the dirt. But I'm going to talk about the first piece. Once you get from the tag, what's important is the readers. So, and when you talk about readers from an RFID perspective, you're talking about fixed readers and you're talking about mobile readers. Mobile readers allow you to go out, do inventories by location, Also find items. Usually a lot of our customers that use our solution, they use our Pro Locate feature to go out, do inventories, find missing items to ensure they've got 100% accuracy in their inventory and know if things are missing or not. The overhead readers are going to allow you to have an RFID choke point or a fixed area where as items move through that area, tags can be read, and they can be read in a couple of different ways. One for just, understanding that that item passed that location, and then it gets, moved down into the middleware, which we'll talk about next. And then the other piece would be if you wanted to understand the direction. So is it coming in my facility? Is it coming out of my facility? We have customers in the federal space that want to know when laptops leave at night and then when laptops return in the morning. So that, one of their key assets that has a lot of their data from a security perspective is coming in and out of the building, and they have visibility on those particular assets. So that's the reader piece. So what makes all this magic happen? And I get this asked by customers all the time. So, okay, how do you know which, when a tag is being read, which record is being updated in the system? And that's the middleware. So the middleware drives all of this in terms of understanding when a reader detects a tag in a specific area, that it has the tag, and then the location is either on the reader or the location is on the mobile that you set in terms of the area you expect it to go in and do an inventory on. But the middleware is really the magic, because that's where it links back to the software and the application software and the middleware. There's a good play right there between, okay, I just grabbed this tag and now I need to check with the software to see which item ID or asset detail record that matches with, so that I can go update the location in which the tag was read, as well as the date and time stamp an item was inventory. So that's really the give and play between the middleware and the application software. Our application software, our UC Web platform, all this stuff works within the platform. It's native to the platform. You can check readers, your mobile readers, as they're doing inventories in the history, as well as checking and seeing when things have been picked up by the RFID agent, which would be one of the fixed, antennas. So different piece. I just want to clarify again, on the antenna side of it, or the fixed reader, you got antennas that will just, grab the location and say, I scanned this particular item at this particular location, and then the other ones will say, there's another one that will allow you to understand the direction in which items are flowing. But all these things work together: the middleware, the application software, our UC Web platform, the item ID and the RFID tag, that allows customers to do RFID inventories with barcode and RFID as a smooth solution. Next chart. So let's talk about the data collection devices, and we'll go on a couple slides after this to kind of discuss a few as well. But primarily, you've got your autonomous reading devices, portals, that sit at the receiving dock, in some facilities, to understand if things are coming in and when they're leaving. This is where that particular transaction will happen. So you're getting reads from your RFID system at points of impact. And I say the points of impacts are, at the dock door, or if I've got an overhead reader that I've got at a specific area at a choke point, and I want to understand the direction in which items are coming. And as they're being read, my property management system is being updated. And then the mobile, using that to then, get those mobile reads. But, when we talk about the application software and the middleware, and then the back-end data, that is just an elegant solution that, our customers enjoy, that allows, you to have this on-premise or hosted in our GovCloud environment. And again, all of these tag reads, these are all data collection devices. The middleware is doing its work, the software is doing its work, and we also have an open API. Most software platforms will have an open API that then allows you to move that data to your ERP system. And in our case, that would be, CostPoint, Oracle, or some of the other, or SAP. We have customers that do that. Also, this is all done in real time. So there's no spreadsheets you got to then go back and update and upload into the system. All the data is right there. Next slide. So let's talk about some of the options. So the options here, and we kind of discussed a few of them. So the overhead transition readers are the ones that are going to be able to tell you where an item transition. Is it coming into my facility? Is it leaving my facility? The other thing I forgot to mention here was the reporting on the back end of this is also extraordinary in terms of customers that we have in the property management area, but we also have commercial customers that use this in a WIP environment. So they want to know how long something sat in staging before it went to pre-prod to then when it finally got the go-ahead to get into production and then out the door. All those particular steps can be captured with an RFID system, and that's some of the benefits that you can see. We've got customers that in a warehouse environment where you need to inventory items using our fork truck readers, and simply that's just a forklift. The reader slides right in there, and then you can get high places, or you can move through a facility fairly quickly. The dark door portals we kind of already showed. We showed a couple of the hallway readers, like this woman as she's moving items through this particular doorway. All these items are being then read and inventoried in the system. And again, when this inventory happens, that means, in your world, it's more the DCMA, okay, the 10 data elements and understanding where my assets are, and then passing an audit and being able to use RFID to read and understand where your assets are, where they've been from a location history perspective. Is all stuff that you need to utilize, and all of these readers are going to give you that ability. Most folks are not using tunnel readers. That's pretty much for folks in the in different areas. The RFID checkout tables, we have seen folks using that for small items, like they're using tools, test tubes, and they want to check things in and out using RFID. So slick table that allows you to do that. And then, I think we talked about and covered the walkthrough readers. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Dan. He's going to talk about the mobile in depth, and over to you, Dan.
Sharif, thanks a lot. A lot of great information there with the various types of reader options. So first and foremost, let's talk about, well, how does RFID work? And from this particular slide, we're talking about the mobile option. And if you look in the lower right-hand corner there, we are looking at a Zebra TC26 with an RFD40 mobile sled. This mobile computer is used obviously for various types of environments, such as a warehouse environment, and it gives you mobile capability. It's just a handheld use case item. And how it works is this. This mobile unit will emit an RF signal, and it will pick up any RFID tag within its particular range. The RF signal will excite the inlay, which is embedded in each single RFID tag, and that data in the tag is then brought back and encoded in the reader of the mobile unit. That data is then processed in your software application, and like Sharif talked about earlier, it gives you real-time updates in terms of what items are in your inventory and the location as to where they're stocked. So let's talk about read range, because that's a big factor. The radio signal transmission from a reader, it can be up to 20 feet or more, and it's determined by the tag and other factors. And those factors are the environmental condition that the assets are stored in the environment. In other words, are your assets stored in an office? Are they stored in a warehouse? Are they stored outdoors? Are they in a ruggedized environment? Are they in an environment where temperature plays a part in the storage of those assets? Perhaps you have some assets that are stored in a freezer. All of these types of factors and environmental conditions weigh in on the performance of the tag, and it will affect the read range. The RFID tags can be read through boxes and containers like Pelican cases. Cardboard boxes, plastic boxes, all of those are fine if you're storing any types of assets. RFID can be read through those. Tags can also be placed on containers or items inside the container. Now, where this runs into a challenge, and we get this question a lot, is, well, what about metal? Can RFID work on metal? You absolutely have an RFID tag option, excuse me, to be placed on metal surfaces. The RFID tag can be read, and sometimes those read ranges can be up to 20 feet or more, even on metal surfaces. Where it runs into a roadblock is RFID cannot be read through metal. So if you have any type of metal containers, metal drawers, tool drawers that are stored in metal drawers, those tools would not be able to be read through those metal surfaces. So that's the key difference. But again, cardboard, Pelican cases, plastics, RFID, those signals can easily be read through. It all is determined by, again, environmental condition and the tag that you're using, i.e. the size of the tag. Generally speaking, the larger the RFID tag, the larger the inlay, the higher the read range you're going to get. But it comes down to testing, and we'll get into that on a future slide. Next slide, please. So what we do here at A2B Tracking, we concentrate on passive RFID tags for two main reasons. One, there's a cost factor. There is no need for any type of battery power with a passive RFID tag, because like we talked about in the previous slide, the tag is read from the reader, whether it's the fixed reader options that Sharif had talked about earlier, or the mobile option that I talked about on the previous slide. It emits the signal, it excites the tag, and it programs the data, and it is read accordingly. Active RFID tags are a tag that do require batteries. They're significantly more expensive, and those batteries have to be maintained and replaced every so often. So the true time to value and the best bang for your buck that we found here at A2B Tracking is using the passive RFID tag. Now, every RFID tag is encoded with an EPC code or electronic product code. That's the unique identifier in the inlay itself, and that code is associated to the tag ID, which could be your part number, your serial number, asset ID number, whatever you call it. And again, the tag must be compatible with the item. And if you look here, we have three different items. We have cardboard box, we have a Pelican case, and we have a laptop. So we're looking at cardboard, plastic, and metal. There are literally hundreds of different types excuse me, of RFID tags, passive RFID tags that are available today. So it's very, very important to know the surface that you're marking and the environmental condition that those assets are going to be exposed to, because that will lead in determining the proper RFID tag to give you the absolute best read range. And by best, meaning the highest read range, to give you that flexibility so that you don't have to be right up on top of the asset. If you're using, let's say, barcode technology, we got to be right up to that barcode to be able to scan it. You want to let the technology do the work for you. And the best way to do that is doing some due diligence, identifying the assets, the surfaces that they're going to be applied to, and the environmental conditions that those assets will be exposed to. Next slide. Excuse me. So the benefits of passive RFID tags, like we talked about, the cost to implement, it's a very low cost. Active RFID tags are very, very expensive in comparison to passive RFID. Passive RFID tags require no maintenance, so there's no batteries to change. So essentially, once you've identified the proper passive RFID tag, you just set it and forget it. Typically, most passive RFID tags are used with an adhesive backing. However, there are other types of applications, such as hang tags, or they can be riveted on. But passive RFID tags can also last up to 20 years or more. So essentially, if you're picking the right RFID tag, that tag will last for the entire life cycle of the asset. So there's no need to go back like you do with an active RFID tag to replace batteries or replacing the tag itself. And key point, passive RFID tags, again, come in an endless variety, which allow for finding the appropriate tag for just about any type of asset and environmental condition that the asset would be exposed to. Next slide. So tag selection. When people are talking about implementing an RFID application, the first thing that they talk about is the tag itself. That's the thing that people most like to look at. What type of tag am I going to use? How small or how big? Well, there's a lot of processes that need to take place. You want to do your due diligence in deciding what the appropriate tag is, and you would work this with your vendor that you would be dealing with. So the first thing you want to look at is, okay, what are all the assets that need to be tagged? What type of different assets am I dealing with? Are they going to be packaged in cardboard, Pelican cases? Are there any metal surfaces that I need to be aware of? What are all the surface types and environmental conditions that these assets are going to be exposed to? Very, very important in determining the tag. What are your read range requirements? And that is a big factor when you're dealing with the fixed readers that Sharif talked about earlier, or mobile, or both. With mobile readers, you can get right up on an asset if you like. But let's say you have a fixed reader over a door, that the picture that Sharif showed you earlier, maybe that door, maybe it's a standard 8 or 9 foot door, or maybe it's a very high 15-foot dock door, or whatever the case may be. You want to be sure that whatever tag you choose is going to be acceptable to that condition. Meaning, okay, the mobile unit, maybe I only need 5 or 6 feet to stand from the asset, but I got to be sure that that tag, when it's passing through an egress, such as a high doorway of maybe 12 to 15 feet, I want to be sure that that tag can also have the read range to accommodate those fixed readers as my assets are passing through my facility. Excuse me. Now, another key point in determining the right tag is testing and evaluating. I cannot stress enough that there really is no one single easy answer in determining a tag. Certainly by identifying the types of assets that are going to be marked, the environmental conditions that the assets are going to be exposed to, your vendor, such as A2B Tracking, we can certainly make suggestions that we feel these are going to be the best tags. But we may come up with 2 or 3 tags that would work best, and then you would want to test those tags to give you the optimum read range or best performance to identify that performance as well as the cost. Because again, tag costs can be determined. Certainly we know the difference between active and passive, but within the passive family, there are different size tags and different tag options that will give you good performance. But if your budget is a concern, you can look at other options to give you something that fits within your budget, but also meeting your performance objectives. And that's why it's so clear to see why RFID test selection is so critical, because the tag itself, it's like the foundation on a house, right? If you've got a solid foundation, the house is going to stay. The RFID tag, by doing this due diligence, everything else will fall into play. Next slide. So when you're talking about RFID tags, you have the option to print these tags, and you will need to look at who's going to do the printing. Am I going to do the printing in-house, or do I want to outsource it? Well, there are various pros and cons to both. Printing on demand, it eliminates any concern about dealing with vendors in terms of their cost, in terms of their lead time, when are they going to ship. So the control is with your vendor that you've chosen, as opposed to being in-house. Now, some of the cons, you would need somebody to have the expertise to print these tags, because it's not just printing them, it's also encoding them. You also have the initial investment of buying the printer and the appropriate consumables, the RFID tags, the ribbon, etc. And you also need to look at maintaining appropriate inventory levels to making sure that you have the appropriate stock. So those are the pros and cons of doing it in-house. If we look at it from the next slide, outsourcing RFID tags, again, also pros and cons. Now the pros are, well, you don't have to buy a printer. You don't have any worry about having to do the printing and encoding yourself. And printing vendors can offer many different type of tag options for you, where if you may want to keep a very low inventory stock, that's something you'd want to consider. Cons is, well, finding a reliable vendor, right? Someone you can trust, someone who can meet your lead times. The process can be tedious. You know, you got to get a quote, you got to send a purchase order. There's usually a proofing process. And most importantly, how fast can your vendor supply you with the tags? Because there's two factors that you have no control over. And that's the manufacturing time that the vendor will need to produce the tag. And then they're going to turn it over to a shipper such as FedEx or UPS. And what is their transit time going to be like? Or what if there's, you know, something out of the ordinary that delays the shipment? So there are pros and cons to both. Whether you're going to print them yourself or whether you're going to outsource them, I would look at your individual requirements in terms of how fast do you need tags and what is your volume. If you have significant high volume, you may want to look at it doing it yourself, because the real time to value, you'll recoup that cost pretty quickly. But if you have small quantities and small jobs, like maybe 5 or 10 tags at a time, generally vendors have high minimum order costs or minimum order quantities that you would need to look at. So there's a number of factors, but in your case, for your particular use case, that's what you'd want to look at. How fast can I get my labels, and what type of quantities am I dealing with? Next slide. Now this is a key slide here. RFID tag pitfalls to avoid. Purchasing RFID tags too early in the process and just assuming that a tag is a tag is a tag, one size fits all. Absolutely a big no-no. You want to consider, and we've talked about this a few times, consider all the assets that need to be marked, have a good understanding of the environmental conditions, know your read range expectations for the assets that you are inventorying, and decide whether you're going to need mobile or fixed readers or both, and be sure to test to be sure that you're getting the performance of not on the mobile side, but also on your fixed readers. Again, like we talked about, the mobile reader, maybe you only need to stand 5 or 6 feet away, but on the fixed readers, maybe those fixed readers over dock doors or high doorways or egresses, maybe those are maybe 12 to 15 feet. Whatever it is, you just want to be sure that through doing your due diligence of testing, that the tags that you're choosing are not only going to meet your requirements for mobile, but also the compatibility on your fixed readers as well. And we can go to the next slide, and I will turn that back over to my colleague, Sharif.
All right, so let's talk about, some problems, some of our customers that had that we were able to solve. And with the understanding that we've been doing RFID for the last 14 years, it's been incorporated into our product. This is an area we have an expertise in solving complex problems. So the good thing about some of these, these scenarios is that they also involve, some of your DFARS and FARS requirements, which I'm sure most of you guys are more, interested in. So we had this one customer in the university research facility area. Now they're processing UIDs, and they've got this task to do, I think it was like 80,000 assets. And they had about, a year to do it, and they were throwing a ton of labor at it. It was around 50,000 assets. So they were throwing a ton of labor at it to get it done, and they weren't always as accurate, and they wouldn't always meet the threshold, which was right around 85% accuracy. So when we had the conversations with them, we understood that what the issue was, and then how to solve it with RFID. But then what also popped up was their need to also register UIDs, and we were able to help them solve that issue as well. So both, and this is the beauty of the software, the solution that we provide for our customers, is that it gives them the ability to do both. They've got a process, government reporting, whether it's 1149s, DD250s, register items, plus they've got the tracking requirement. This works very well. But this customer was very happy. They were able to get, from an outcome, they were able to get, greater than 90%. They wouldn't share with us the actual number, but greater than 90% from an inventory tracking perspective and accuracy, and in the fraction of the time it took them, a year, and then also saving them money or cutting costs on the amount of labor it required, because with RFID it's one-to-many, barcode it's one-to-one. They all have their advantages and disadvantages, and with a barcode I can see, touch, feel. With RFID I am just capturing a bunch of assets in a quick amount of time, but I can go back and spot check with barcode. But with this customer, the other piece that we talk about a lot was the pro locate, meaning that when they were missing assets and that these assets were tagged with RFID, they were able to find those assets and save a ton of time, opposed to just running around trying to find a needle in the haystack. So this customer was extremely happy, because they were also, the other point that brought them a lot of joy was, in terms of doing their registration straight into Pi. It was an automated process with our UC Web system. It was a one-click button, and it allowed them to, also do their reporting fairly quickly. So that's the part of it from a property management side. I mean, look, RFID is great, but you guys need it to work in your world. And if you've got, contracts, that have that FAR 52-245-1 requirement, you got to do the inventories. This is going to help you do the inventories quicker, more efficient, and then find things as they're missing. And that's the biggest value my customers, tell me they get out of the system, besides being able to do the reporting all within the system from an automated perspective. And that's exactly what this customer enjoyed. It was RFID, it was Pi, it's the combination, and it's the value that we bring to our customers. Next slide. And then this GFP contractor, again, accuracy seems to be the issue, because when you're walking around with spreadsheets, sometimes that's not the most accurate process, but at the same time, it's a process that's commonly used. Folks are checking things off with a pen and paper. This customer was in a secure facility. They had 4,000 assets that were being tracked, and we were able to work with this customer and provide them with a property management system, but not just the property management system, also, some fixed RFID and some mobile RFID capability that allowed them to, do inventories, find assets, and then autonomously track. Both of these customers were using the autonomous tracking features that, always on, no one's there to mind it. All you have to do, if you want to understand where your assets are, you pull up the screen and you see exactly where that asset has traveled. You also have reporting in there that allows you to show which locations and the time in which that item stayed in that location. So this is sophisticated stuff that allows you to really manage your assets in a autonomous fashion. So this customer here, again, they had 2 different locations that they were tracking these assets in, and again, being able to use the Pro Locate, and also passing DCMA audits in terms of understanding where the assets were, how long they stayed in particular locations, and all the locations they traveled in a year, and then what the final location is. And they're able to, when they were in the midst of an audit, they were accurately able to show the auditor that, yes, it's in the system. Here's the reporting in terms of where it's been, and now let's go take a look at it. Yep, it's in the location it's in. And I've had other customers where if it wasn't in that location, they were able to use the Pro Locate feature to find that item and then put it in that that location. Because through the years or through the year, assets move around, people put them in the wrong place, and this is just a way to capture everything you need to capture from an inventory perspective, and make sure you're getting near 99% or 95 and above accuracy, because no one wants to fail an audit. But this customer was happy, and again, all the things that Dan talked about, printing, they decided to print their own tags, so they had that flexibility there. But again, we went through a vigorous tag selection with this customer to make sure that as they track their assets, we had the right tag to work with the readers, and then the right read range to work with the mobiles that they desire. So the tag stuff can be, people kind of miss sometimes, but it's very important. Next slide. So let's take a little bit more in-depth look at all of this, the different options. So we talked about the parts of an RFID system. We've got the tag, we've got the readers, and in this case, we'll talk about the readers again. We've got stuff coming over on the right, stuff's coming into the facility, it's being captured. In this case, let's say that this is a directional reader. It's saying, hey, these items that have been tagged are coming into our facility, and then when they get into our facility, they can then be used in tandem with the mobile to conduct mobile inventories as you go down the aisles. You got 3 aisles in this scenario. The readers are very good use to go in and do those. If it was a bigger facility, you could use the forklift reader to go around and do inventories. All that would be captured and through the middleware and UC Web, updated in the UC Web system, timestamp, location, and then all the history being captured as well. And what we're seeing from our customer base and new customers, probably since the last time we've had this, we've met with you folks and had this webinar, we've seen at least a 250 to 300% increase in customers utilizing RFID systems in the DoD area. These are government contractors that are now using it in a repairable environment where repairables are coming in. They're able to track those items as they're in the facility and like a whip procedure where they know that it's in this particular location and it's got to travel to 3 more before it finally gets repaired and then sent back to the customer from a repairable perspective. Got customers also having multiple locations utilizing RFID to do quick and accurate inventory so they can pass the DCMA audits. So a lot of momentum here in the RFID space, and we're very busy at this time. But this webinar, it's always good to share kind of what's going on with us and how we're seeing this market shape up. Next slide.
Sharif, I was just going to add in that overview slide that people today are dealing with very lean budgets and they're asked to do more with less. And that's where RFID comes into play, because it allows you to become a more efficient workstation. It allows you to do your inventories in a much more timely manner than, let's say, barcode or using spreadsheets. And let's say you need to go find a particular asset, and Sharif mentioned this earlier, the Pro Locate feature within the A2B platform. You can use your mobile unit to hone in on one specific asset ID number, look up the last known location where it was inventoried, go to that location, use your mobile handheld, and that signal will only hone in on that specific RFID tag to find that asset extremely quickly, within seconds. And plus, it also gives you, if you're dealing with audits, the RFID platform within A2B gives you a complete audit history of every single item that has an RFID tag, which tends to make your audits go a lot smoother because the auditor is seeing that, hey, these guys get it. They have the latest technology to be able to account for all their government property, and they're using RFID to do it. And especially if they ask you to go find a particular asset, you just kick in Pro Locate and you find that within seconds. It just makes an audit go that much more smoothly. I also wanted to mention too that A2B Tracking is a proud Zebra Solutions partner. A number of certainly our mobile devices are Zebra. We go through a very strict and thorough vetting process with Zebra Technologies in terms of making sure that the hardware that Zebra provides is fully compatible with the software that we're providing. So it's a great partnership. We've been with Zebra for many, many years, and it's worked very, very well.
Definitely, Dan, definitely. And one of the other things I definitely want, well, one other thing I'd like to just mention is that, when you're doing RFID, you want to make sure that all the things that we talked about, whether you do RFID with us or another vendor, which we hope not, but when you do RFID, you got to make sure, like Dan stressed, the tag selection, because we see a lot of science projects and we get a lot of people that we will turn away to say, you really need to rethink this, or maybe RFID is not the right choice here because your requirements don't line up to the way that the technology works. So sometimes we have to do that because customers will think of a way in which they want to implement RFID, but it might not be how RFID is meant to be implemented, because you can't read RFID through water, metal. Like if you're trying to go through metal, you can't do that. There are some limitations, and through all the lessons learned that we've worked with different customers in different scenarios, whether in research labs, universities, even in some of the corporate environments, trying to track laptops and some of their fixed equipment. It's not going to fit in every area. Sometimes you can't get a tag on a particular asset for it to be, show high value from an RFID perspective. So, you really have to sit down and think about it, and you need to make sure you're working with someone who understands the technology. Otherwise, you can get into the situation where, it just becomes a science project and then nothing gets done of value at the end of the day.
Well, that's
right.
great. But Dan,
one more time, Dave, one more thing. We would not be, in the positions we are unless we plugged our MPMA sessions. So I want to make sure you guys know on Monday at 1:30 p.m., sign up for the RFID for property management, for property managers. We'll give you more scenarios. We'll also go over barcode and where that's used, and really the value in more of a agnostic setting and discussion. I mean, Dan, do you want to plug your session?
Yeah, that'd be great. As Sharif had mentioned, both Sharif and I will be down at the MPMA conference down at the Hyatt Regency in New Orleans, August 11th through the 14th. I will be conducting an IUID compliance session on Wednesday at 11:30. So by all means, feel free to sign up for that, or Sharif's RFID session as well.
great. So I wanted to move to the question and answer section here. If people have questions, feel free to enter them into the GoToWebinar panel. There's a questions pane there, and just type it in as we go. The first question I have, guys, is how long does a typical RFID implementation take? What should be expected?
Dan, you want to take the first crack at that one?
Yeah, sure. Typically, from the day that we receive your purchase order to the day that you're up and running and ready to go on your own, it's typically a 60-day window. Once we receive your purchase order, obviously there's hardware to order. There's a website that needs to get stood up, tags to be ordered, training to be done. Typically within 60 days from date of purchase order, you're generally up and running full blast.
Great.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is it really depends. Usually the long pole in the tent is actually sometimes ordering the hardware.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be a challenge, but we've had some customers that wanted to have visibility in their warehouse or in their facility. Maybe they're using 15 to 30 fixed readers. Those type of implementations, they can take a little longer, because you do need to do a site visit. You do need to make sure that the facilities people are on site, or on board with everything. There's some adjustments you need to make in terms of getting the Ethernet ran to some of the areas. So it could go to 90 days on it, but it does depend on the deployment. But every deployment that we do would come with a project manager and a timeline, a schedule for accountability, and that's how you keep these projects moving.
The other thing too, Sharif, in regards to that question that Dave brought up, with A2B tracking, we do use a common sense approach. So you could start very small with maybe just a couple of handheld readers just to start, and that could be done fairly quickly. And then you can grow.
Whoops, I think Dan might have muted himself.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure what happened there. But I just wanted to say that you could start very small, where we use a common sense approach here at A2B Tracking, where they could just, I'm not sure why my mute keeps doing that. I apologize. Hopefully that'll stop. Using a common sense approach to RFID, if you just start out with just a couple of small mobile units, and you could grow your RFID solution by adding more mobile units or more fixed readers, more tags, etc. You don't have to do your whole warehouse if you wanted to. You could start off with a section of your warehouse to kind of get a taste of the technology and then move on from there. And that certainly would shorten the lead time as well. Just another option that you could do.
So I've got a question that has come in regards to the time frame of implementation and how long that's going to take. And the first part of the question is, would that include affixing all of the RFID tags? Was that 60-day average window? Does that include affixing tags?
It would depend on how many tags we're talking. If we're talking maybe 1,000 assets, that could. If you're talking 10,000 assets, it would depend on the bandwidth, of the customer, how many people they have readily available to mark the tags.
Right. And then the next part of this question is, how do you handle cross-referencing previous barcodes with the new RFID tag?
We could do a cross-reference where you assign your existing number to the new RFID tag. We can do an import function, basically using an Excel spreadsheet, and get all the data downloaded and imported into the application. But that's something that would be worked out with training to get that done in the easiest possible way.
But then there would be an RFID tag attached as well as the barcode tag, or is that sort of?
That is correct. What would happen is, if they already have a barcode label on an asset, we could duplicate, the barcode number and print that on the RFID tag, and the EPC code, the inlay within the RFID, would be cross-referenced to that barcode number. And that would be in the system.
Great. Yeah, it connects two ways, and I'll just interject here. So within the system, it'd be your item ID. So your item ID would have that barcode string, and every time you go out and interrogate an asset with the barcode, then that particular, the middleware is going to know that that particular record has just been scanned, and now what it's going to do is do the time, location, and date stamp, and then also the location in which it was scanned in. And then on the RFID side, there's a field for the RFID tag. So there's a specific field the RFID hexadecimal string will go in, and that will allow you to catch all the RFID tags. So there's two ways in which the record is connected, or the license plates. The two license plates are the item ID and the RFID tag. And then again, it's that 7 to 9 linear barcode number in the item ID section, and then in the RFID tag section, it's 8, 16, 32, 24, 32, the hexadecimal string that
that's right.
Would connect it when an RFID scan is initiated. So within those two areas, that's why we say you can do barcode and RFID. You can switch on the Zebra TC27 with the RFD40. You can switch between modes, barcode and RFID. So if you're in a situation where you need to get a barcode scan because the item's not marked RFID, you can just walk up to it, scan it, and then, like Dan said, you just make sure you get that number, the barcode string, into the UC web platform, and that string would be your item ID, and it would be unique.
Okay, so the next question that's come in here is asking for mobile RFID. How do you know the items that get scanned are not being duplicated?
Well, thank you. Every RFID tag is like a license plate. It is entirely unique. Every EPC code that's generated, let's say you wanted to print your own tags, and we supply you with 1,000 blank RFID tags. Every single one of those EPC codes in the inlay are unique. None is duplicated. So even if you were to give us the same part number twice, let's just say you did that. You shouldn't, but let's say you did. There'd be 2 RFID tags on 2 different assets, even though the part number is the same. The RFID inlay is unique, so there'd never be a duplicate RFID tag. It's just impossible. The only way, I shouldn't say that. The only way that you could do that is if you were printing your own tags and you were overwriting the encoding within the tag and you somehow used the same encoding twice. Now that should never happen. And that's why these tags, the passive RFID tags, already come pre-programmed with a hexadecimal string that is entirely unique. But again, if you wanted to override that encoding, it can be done, and we would cover that in training. But we would show you, here's what you would want to do. You'd want to create some type of serialization strategy on the encoding side to be sure you're not duplicating any efforts.
I think,
So
hold on a second.
Yeah.
I think if I can clarify David's question, I think it was a little bit different. It was how do you know that the items, when they get scanned, don't get a duplicate scan and put into the record twice in a very short period of time?
Well, if it got scanned twice, so let's say, let's say if it got scanned twice, right? It would just update. If it got scanned at 3 o'clock and then it got scanned again at 3:01, it would show that the later scan would show up in the history or as the last scan, but it would the system would catch both scans in the system.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dave, I misunderstood that.
No, that's fine. I think your information was well.
Just to put a point on that, just in case, and I'll be real quick. You can't have duplicate hexadecimal strings in the system. When you go to do that, it'll throw up all over you and won't let you put two of them in the system with the same license plates. So
they're very similar to the IUID compliance strategy. There's no 2 IUIDs the same. RFID works the same way.
Okay, so the next question that's come in here from Maria is talking about locations and registering locations with the mobile RFID so that in items in the building, the devices will tag a specific room number or a rack number. How do locations get assigned?
So the locations get loaded into the system. So you tell us which locations are important to you. When I go to do an inventory, I can select the location that I expect to be in. And when I select that location and I put those assets in those locations, then let's say there's 10 items in that particular area and I go to do an inventory, I expect to see 10 items. And it'll show you a percentage of which items have been scanned. So if you go in there and only 8 items are in there, then those 8 items, it'll show 80%, the inventory is 80% done. Now let's say you keep moving on and you go to the next room and those 2 items that were supposed to be in the other room are in that particular room, then they're gonna automatically be moved to that room as the new location on record. Now, if you want to move them back, you can do that. But let's say you went back and then did the inventory of those 8 items and you got those same 8 items, then the inventory would show 100% inventory for that room. But if you've got moves or things that moves, you can control that as well. But the system's smart enough to know that if another item gets picked up in another room, then it'll automatically move it to that. Unless you go back and say, hey, no, I don't want that move to happen. I want you to move, I need to move those 2 items back so that area has 10 items as specified. So you get a lot of flexibility there. And then in the back end, all moves will be shown in terms of on the reports, when an item moved and, once it was scanned in inventory.
Great. Perfect. I've got a question that came in regards to when tags get destroyed or damaged, an RFID tag gets destroyed. Does that mean, Dan, does that mean that you can just replace that and you'll get all the same information? It'll all be stored and work moving forward?
Yeah, what would happen is that the history would not disappear just because the tag is destroyed, and a tag can easily be duplicated. The key is we would need to know what that EPC code is of the tag that was destroyed, and that EPC code record is in the application. There's a specific field. We would just go to the field, find that EPC code. We would take a new blank RFID tag, duplicate the print, and encode it with the encoding from the original tag. So you're using the same tag.
Hey, Dan, can I just do a quick clarification real quick? So
Yeah, sure.
just remember the hexadecimal string, all that is a license plate.
That's right.
All of the data is not in the on our system. It's not in the tag. It's in the asset detail. So like
Right.
those 10 data elements for the FAR, those are all fields in the UC Web software in the asset detail. The connection to RFID is just that license plate and the tag once it's interrogated. So the data is not in the tag in regards to all the important data you need to, do your property management, requirements. It's not in the tag. It's in the asset detail. The tag just serves as a license plate to that record.
That's right.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. There are a couple of questions still remaining, but I think they should go offline. And I think we should wrap this up. And thank you, Dan and Sharif, for your sharing your information here. This was a wonderful session. And we look forward to seeing everybody at the NPMA conference.
Yeah, we'll see you in Nolens.
Yeah, see you next month. And thank you everyone for your time today. We hope you found it informative.
Yep, thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Yep, and just one last clarification is that we will be following up with a recording and a slide deck. So look for that email in the next few days. Thank you very much.
Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
See
Lisa.
you guys soon.
See you
See you
soon.
later.
Take care.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.